Welcome, and thank you for tuning in to Black Women Amplified, the podcast. Your host, Monica Wisdom Tyson, brings you downloadable conversations that matter to women around the globe. We discuss all things Black girl magic, amplify our voices, and transform our challenges into triumphs. Monica calls on her League of Extraordinary Women to push our boundaries, share their expertise, and stories of personal transformation. Welcome, your host of Black Women Amplified, Monica Wisdom Tyson.
Hello, Black Women Amplified family. This is your girl, Monica Wisdom, and I am thrilled that you are here today. We are rounding out this series. We are on episode 7, and this is not going to be our traditional podcast episode. Nothing about this series is traditional, but I'm going to do a little teaching, a little instruction. I'm going to put on my strategist hat and give you some tools to put inside your Soft Life toolkit so that you will have a place to come to if you feel like you need to recalibrate your GPS system. If you don't know what that is, listen to episode 6. But we talked about recalibrating our GPS system. So I want to welcome you back. But before we dive in, I need you to hear me loud and clear. Louder than the voices in your head, because the loudest critic you'll ever face is the one living rent-free inside of your thoughts. The voice that tells you you're too much or you're not enough. It's the echo of keep your head down that you learned in childhood. The side eye you got when you spoke up at work. The pressure of carrying everybody else's burdens. Because you're the strong one and everybody talks to you. But what if I told you that voice isn't yours? What if you could reclaim your narrative, rewrite your script, and finally step into your full power of your Black womanhood? We're at a turning point. After long seasons of hustling and bearing witness to injustice, the performing strength at the expense of our joy, something has shifted. We have collectively decided to untether ourselves from the expectations that we must save everyone else before we save ourselves. That's some revolutionary stuff happening. But it's not happening outside in the world. It's happening within us. Your inner narrative, how you talk to yourself about your self-worth, your dreams, and your capacity is shaping every choice that you make. Whether you raise your hand in the boardroom, speak your truth at the family table, or step into a brand new calling, it's time to get real about those stories and where they come from, how they've been holding you back, and what it looks like to overwrite them and be in your truth and in your brilliance. Yes, I told you this is going to be an episode about getting real. Like, this is that episode. This is that teaching. This is the point in which we shift everything. Everything we've talked about, now it comes to make sense of what we've been talking about. Because we're going to uncover the root of that inner critic. Most of us grew up with 2 messages. You can be anything, and you better not ask for too much. We learned to code switch, be quiet at home, polished at the office, and happy in public. How many times have you walked around with that smile and you're like, why am I smiling inside your head? It's because survival demanded it. I'm going to go a little bit deep into the root of it. If you think about Jim Crow, when you think about Jim Crow, you couldn't look in Jim Crow, which is where, if you're Gen X, our parents grew up in Jim Crow, whether it was the North, the South, the East, or the West. Jim Crow was everywhere. They want to tell you it's in the South, but it was everywhere. And not to the degree that it was in the South, but okay. It was about survival. It was about being safe. not to look people in the eye, to look down, to hold your head down, because your parents literally couldn't look a white person in the eye, right? Because it was life or death. So those teachings were put onto us, even though most of us are born after the Civil Rights Act had passed. So the Jim Crow laws were no longer in effect, but that still was a part of their DNA. Now, here's the thing. We have to understand that those survival tactics are now part of us. And along the way, we internalize all of that. So we don't speak too loudly. We don't laugh loud. We learn not to expect too much, because you're being picky or particular, persnickety, arrogant, all of those terms. When you ask for too much, you're not easy to work with. You're demanding. You're difficult. Those became the tape that we play inside of our mind. So when you have all of that going on, do you actually dare to dream? Or are you just trying to get to the next day? Think back to those childhood moments when your parents, your teacher, your coach praised you for doing all the great things. But they also said, don't embarrass the family. Or a friend who envied your confidence called you too extra or too much. Are you doing too much, like the kids say? Those words plant seeds of doubt disguised as concern. And since then, every microaggression you face, being cut off at meetings, taken for support staff. Melody Hobson did a whole TED Talk about somebody thought she was the Coke girl, and she was one of the main contributors at a philanthropic dinner. It's called Color Brave. You should really check it out, because that's what this is. Being mistaken as support staff simply because the color of your skin. I remember working in a salon, and I worked in a salon, and it was a majority non-Black salon. And there was this woman, every time she came in, she walked up to me to tell me she was here. I was like, why does she keep telling me she's here? And somebody said, Monica, she thinks you're the shampoo girl. Shampoo girl? I didn't go to school for 2 years to be a shampoo girl. Nothing, no shade on shampoo girls, but that's not what I do. No shade though. I don't shade anybody for getting their money, but my point is that what she was looking for, I was not her. And you're also told that you're angry when you're just being passionate about expressing yourself and the way that you choose to express yourself. And these narratives are reinforced day after day after day. And so that inner critic grew out of the need to belong in spaces that you were never meant to be in. They didn't build those tables for us. But in this series, A Soft Life is Political, we're dismantling all of that. We're going to build the world we deserve from the inside out. Now let's talk about naming those false narratives. Before we can rewrite the story, we have to unmask the lies and spend a moment right now going through all of that. Now, this is where you get out your pen and your notebook and you start taking notes and you write down what I say. Because spend a moment right now asking yourself, what am I telling myself when I hesitate to apply for that promotion? When I don't speak up at a meeting? When I shrink myself around my partner or my family? What are the things that you are telling yourselves when you ask yourself that question? Let me do it again. These are 3 questions. What am I telling myself when I hesitate to apply for that promotion? When I don't speak up in a meeting? And when I shrink myself around my partner or my family? What is the narrative that happens inside of your head? Write that down. Maybe it's I'm not ready, or they might think that I'm arrogant, or I might look stupid if I fail. Write down everything, just brainstorm it, because those are the inherent narratives that we are going to deal with today in this podcast episode. These are messages from generations who survived by dimming their light, by shrinking themselves. They served a purpose then, but right now in this moment, they're blocking our path forward. And yes, everybody's all about girl power. Everybody's all about the 92%. And collectively, we are shouting. But when those doors close, are you still cheering and shouting? Naming those narratives are the first act of rebellion. And let me remind you, this is all an inner conversation that we're having. We're rebelling against those narratives within ourselves. When you call it out, oh, that's just mine, or I'm just not enough tape, you break its power. When you name it, you break the power that it has on you. And now it's time to step into choosing the script that works, that enhances your power. Crafting your new empowered narrative. That's the revolution. Rewriting your inner story. Let me tell you, it's not about it's not about toxic positivity. I don't even know what that is, but I hear the kids talking about it. I'm like, what? Or pretending hardship didn't happen, like just being Pollyanna about everything. It's about acknowledging the pain and choosing a higher truth. For every I'm not enough, counter it with I'm more than enough. I've survived worse and I still shine. Now, how you begin. These are the 4 steps of this process, this framework of how you begin reframing your narrative. First, you want to listen and pause. When doubt creeps in, stop. Take 3 deep breaths. Feel tension in your body, figure out where it is, and recognize that voice that separates you from your God-given essence. I was just having this conversation with my nephew. He called me the other day to he had some really great news, but he was also talking about, I'm not going to talk about what he was talking about, but I said, can I offer something to you? Because I understand that he's an adult. And all my kids that have grown up, all the kids that have grown up around me, I let them know when they turn a certain age that Auntie is always here for you, but the advice is upon request because they need, they make their own decisions. So I said, can I offer you something? And I said to him, it took me a while, and this is this whole inner narrative work. It took me a minute to realize that when somebody said something to me, what was responding back. So if somebody said something that hurt my feelings or felt off, I was quick to respond. But I had to learn how to take a pause. Take a pause and figure out which voice is responding. Am I in this moment or is my pain from the past responding to this moment? Has what somebody said to me, is it really bothering me right now, or did it trigger me from something that happened before? So this is the whole exercise of recrafting your inner narrative from a critic to an empowered place. So we're going to go through this framework, and this is how you begin. Number 1, pause and listen, right? Somebody says something to you, instead of quick wit, pause and listen. And when I say listen, not necessarily to the other person, but listen to yourself and figure out where that voice came from. Is it your pain speaking, or are you in this moment right now? Recognize the voice and ensure that it is from your truth and not your trigger. Second, question its source. We kind of went into that. But where did you learn how to believe this? Who told you that you weren't worthy? What's connected to this moment? What is connected to this trigger? Is it your grandmother's worrying? Is it your grandmother's warning? Your grandmother's worry, same thing. Is it a teacher who reprimanded you? Or was it a boss that made an offhanded remark? Or was it somebody you dated that said something really crazy to you and you internalized it? Every trigger is connected to a memory from the past. And so if somebody says something to you, that's why I said you have to take a pause and listen. You can listen to the person, but I want you to listen to yourself. And then question its source. That's number 2. And then number 3, reclaim the truth. Now, you might not do it in that moment. You might just take a pause and decide not to respond and tell the person, you know what, let's revisit this later, right? And then you want to go and do your homework. Replace the lie with a statement that's rooted in evidence. If somebody says, girl, you ain't nothing, instead of replying to that, you say, let's revisit that. And then you go back and ask yourself, why is that bothering me? It should just roll off like water off a duck's ass. Like it just shouldn't even bother me, but it's really bothering me. Why would? And we go into the internal conversation. Well, why would she say something like that? Why would she do this? And what is that? What she really thinks of me? Is that what I think of myself? Is that what I'm presenting? You go into all of these questions and you begin to spin out. But this is where the reframing begins. We say to ourselves, if they say, "Girl, you ain't nothing," you say, "Huh? Does this ring true that I ain't nothing, that I'm not good enough, that I'm not worthy? What is the evidence that I am worthy, that I am enough, that I do belong here?" And then you want to write that down. What is the evidence that says I am enough, I am worthy, and I do belong here? Because you have to give yourself time to process the situation. And that's where the healing comes in. We're so quick to respond or ignore it and just don't deal with it. But we're going to go in and reclaim the truth for ourselves so that the next time somebody says that, instead of believing it or spinning, you say, oh, that's her problem, not mine. Because I do belong here. I am enough. I am smart enough. I am brilliant. I belong in this space at any time. If you hesitate to speak up, recall a time when you were in a space where you didn't speak up. Instead of responding, you didn't speak up. That's another perspective. So either you snap back or you shrank. And then why did you do that? Where did that come from? So this is where you begin to reclaim your truth. Why did I not say anything to that person? She said I'm not enough and I just took it. I didn't snap back. Because in somewhere in my life and in my body and in my brain, I believe what they said. But where did that come from? What is the genesis of that thought? Like we said, it could have been a parent, it could have been a teacher, it could have been a peer, a church member, a pastor, just somebody passing you on the street who's having a bad day. But when you find the evidence of the opposite, then you begin to let go, forgive, and reclaim your actual truth. And now that we have paused and listened, questioned its source, reclaim the truth, now we reinforce it with ritual. And what is ritual? We speak our new narrative daily. morning affirmations, journal entries, recorded voice memos, whatever it takes to recalibrate your brain to a new default. Our default typically is what the false narrative is. And in order to recalibrate our brain, we're going to declare what the real evidential, is that a word? What the real evidence states about our life. So if the false narrative says we're not worthy, the real narrative is I am worthy. And what is the evidence of that? The success you've had in your life, the love you have shared, the way that you cascade through a room, charming and brilliant, the way that you share your ideas, your genius, all of those things, that is evidence that that inner narrative, that inner critic is not telling you the truth. It's just not true. Now, I just want to say that when we talk about affirmations, I remember I was going through a time when I felt I was just in a horrible place. My brother had passed away. I was just lost and I didn't know what to do with my life. I was, just all over the place. I was a mess. I was a mess. And I remember going to a business retreat and they did an exercise about affirmations. So it was kind of like this, but it was a much simpler version of this. But write down, the exercise was write down what you want to experience in life. And mine was self-worth. So my affirmation became I am worthy. So what I did is I put it out everywhere around my place. And I wrote it in red lipstick on my mirror in the bathroom. It says, I am worthy. So when I'm brushing my teeth, I would say it over and over and over again until it permeated me. And I no longer heard the false narrative of I'm not worthy. And my unworthiness came from my traumatic childhood, abandonment issues and abuse and all of those type of things. And so the more I said I am worthy, the more when the feeling of not being worthy came up, I had something to replace it with, right? I had something to replace that narrative with, because it wasn't other people telling me this. It was me telling myself. And I used the evidence of my childhood to reinforce it. But then I had other evidence that said the exact opposite. So that's how we shift the narrative in our head, is we replace the false narrative with evidence and the new narrative. And so when number 4 is reinforce with ritual, meaning you want to do something repeatedly. Journal entries. Get out your journal and write 3 pages of whatever your mantra is, whatever that is for you. I am strong. I am worthy. I am vulnerable. If you feel like you have strong Black woman syndrome is what I call it. Mine was I am worthy. I would just write it over and over and over again. And then I put it everywhere and I would recite it over and over and over again. And anytime I felt like I was in a place, I would just close my eyes for a second, put my hand on my heart, and I would just say to myself, I am worthy, I am safe. I am worthy, I am safe. And you could even do a voice memo. You could do a reminder. Put a voice memo on your phone and put in your reminder and then play it periodically through the day. That would kind of break up that constant inner narrative. You have to be disruptive. This is about disrupting that narrative. And so it's important that we as Black women own our narratives and that we understand that this is not just personal. It's not just about us. It's about everybody. Because as we know, when Black women shift, the whole world shifts. Every time you reclaim your worth, you chip away at the stereotypes that confine us, like strong Black woman, the one who doesn't need any rest, or angry Black woman, the one who must mute her righteous rage. By rewriting your story, you redefine what strength looks like. Strength includes softness. It includes rest. and it includes radical self-care. So when you shift your inner dialogue, you send ripples throughout the community to your daughters, your sisters, your friends. They witness you speaking kindly to yourself and being tender with yourself. And they learn to do it as well. I remember when I was making this shift, I hadn't seen my best friend in a while because when I go through stuff, I kind of retreat from everybody. And I went to her house and she said, "There's something different about you." I said, "Is it?" And that's when I realized the work I had been doing was working. She said, "You don't seem the same." And I wasn't. Because that inner dialogue was hindering everything and it colored everything I did. It made me snappy, sarcastic, mean, righteous, all of those things. And that's why I say we have to define our own softness, because softness, for the soft life for me, is about me healing, is about me seeing myself in a whole new way. And it's a constant thing. It's not something that happens overnight. You won't listen to this podcast and all of a sudden your life is different. But what this does is it opens up a new conversation within yourself. Because when they witness you speaking kindly to yourself, it opens up a portal for them to speak kindly to themselves. Because this is how we change the narrative for future generations, and how the soft life becomes a political movement. It becomes a new calling. It becomes a new way of life. Now, let's make it tangible. Let's choose one or two of these practices and integrate it into your week. One thing you can do is mirror work. Mirror work is what I did for a long time, and I still do it occasionally. And every morning you look yourself in the eyes and inside of your mirror. Remember, I told you I wrote, "I am worthy" on my mirror. And I speak my name and one truth. Monica, you are capable. Monica, I am worthy. Monica, I am creative. Monica, I deserve love. And then you want to do a narrative mapping. Write down 3 reoccurring negative thoughts. Beside each one, I want you to write the factual evidence that contradicts it. Remember, we talked about what is the evidence that says that this statement is not true, this idea is not true, what they said is not true. I want you to physically write it down. I am not good enough. What is the evidence that lets you know that you are? I am not smart enough for this new job. What is the evidence that shows that you are? I remember I sat down with a client one time who was thinking about, she was at a crossroads at her job, and she was a high-powered position. And she was at the crossroads of, should I get another job and work for another company? Or should I start my own company? So I got out a piece of paper. I took her through my visioning process really quickly. It's a quick process, but it's powerful. And then I said to her, let's talk about, she's in finances. I said, well, let's bring it down to dollars and cents, which is a language that you understand. That's the good thing about my coaching. I customize it. It's not like a cookie cutter thing. So I customized it to her. How much money did you, and I went through the process. And by the end of it, we had come to a dollar amount that she had generated for another company. And I said to her, what is the number if you built your business on 10% of this, what does it look like? And we looked at that number. She started her own company. 11 years ago, she started her own company and it boomed. Everything she wanted it to be, it became. And then she turned around and sold it and made a crap load of money. So that's what narrative remapping does, is that you have this idea. Her idea was, I can't do my own business. I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not this. People who do this are like this, or like this, or like this. I said, okay, well, let's look and see what you've actually done. And so we wrote it all down. Everything that she had actually done for this company. I said, well, Like I said, if you do 10% of that for yourself, you're doing okay. So narrative mapping is very, very powerful. It seems simple, but it's very powerful when you put things down in black and white. Now, the fourth thing are voice memo affirmations. Record a 30-minute audio for yourself, starting with your new beliefs. I am worthy to build the business that builds my dreams. And play it when you feel in doubt. Like if you're at a corporate job and you want to start your own business, create something for that. If you're a single woman and you want a relationship, and in your head you think, what man is going to deal with this mess? Well, there are people that are attracted to you. There are people that think you're beautiful, adorable, and there are men who think your mess is marvelous. And so now we're going to write, I am marvelous. I attract the perfect person that will adore all of my attributes. That is your positive voicemail. I attract someone who thinks that I am adorable and loves all of my attributes. Ding, 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 ding. And then you want to do a community check-in. You want to share your new narrative with a trusted person, somebody that you absolutely trust, and ask her or him to call you out when you're going the opposite way, when you're starting that spinning or that negative conversation with yourself, or you're out loud and you're doubting yourself, self-doubt. And they say, hey, hey, hey. And you don't have to tell them what's going on. Just say to them, if I'm spinning out and I'm going through self-doubt and I'm feeling sorry for myself, I need you to say this. And whatever that is, whatever your safe word is, it could be, hey, say your mantra to yourself. Or I just touch my hand and say, I just want you to remind you that you're safe. Because you need somebody who's going to help you disrupt those thoughts. We don't have to do everything on our own. That's a part of our superwoman syndrome. We think we have to do it all on our own. And it's just not true. I had to learn it. That's why I got my sister girls on speed dial. Now, these aren't just feel-good tricks. They're about rewiring your thought process. And over time, your brain will change its default. There's a movie I want you to see. Now, it's real woo-woo, but it's called What the Bleep. And What the Bleep talks about the science behind what I'm talking about. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a medical person. But I know that our brain has the power to rewire itself. And oftentimes when we have an emotion or a feeling or a trigger, we already have a set default, but it's not permanent. It can shift and change. And the exercises that I put inside this podcast help that process. Now, here's the thing. Like I said, this is not our typical podcast episode. You're going to do some work. I want you to open up your journal, a fresh notebook page, and I want you to answer these two questions. What is the single most limiting story I've been telling myself? And number 2, what new story do I choose to tell myself instead? One that honors my worth, my power, and my divine purpose. Now, ask yourself those questions and write them in present tense. Not I want or I will or I might. You want to say I am, I have, I choose. And then you want to read it out loud to yourself. Let your body feel what the truth sounds like. It's going to feel strange at first. You're going to be like, but that's where you go in a little deeper. You just say it more, you say it out loud, you put it in a voice memo, you write it across your mirror, you put Post-its everywhere so that you are constantly repeating the positive perspective of your life. Now, before we close out this episode, I know it's been a lot, and you're like, Monica, this is team too much. That's the inner narrative that says you can't do the work. I promise you can do the work, and I promise you if you do the work, you'll start to chip away at that default of negativity about yourself. You will quiet that inner critic. And before we close, I want to give you one more trick that I do for myself. I name her. Anytime she comes up now, I say, girl, and I have a name for her. I'm not going to tell you, that's my business. But I have a name for her. And when she creeps up, I say, girl, sit down. Sit it down. And even with my clients, I said, what's her name? Who? What are you talking about? That girl in your head that says you're not good enough. What's her name? Oh, name her. It might be male. Name him. It might be a teacher from the 5th grade. It might be a coach that you had. It might be somebody that said, girl, you eat too much. It might be that girl. It might be that jealous girl. Because you cute. Anyway, that's just a little, that has nothing to do with this episode. That's just a little side trick that I do. I name her. And I want you to really think about, before we close out, I really want you to think about this. I know I'm making this light, but it's simple. It seems simple, but it's a powerful tool, because you will notice when you finish listening to this, you'll start to notice that inner critic and how you talk to yourself. You'll start to notice that when you do something and it's not quite perfect, it's not quite right, that voice that comes up, and it could be your mother's voice. It could be an aunt's voice. It could be a cousin's voice. It could be a brother or a sister's voice. Those things that seem like, oh, it's just a part of our culture. Some of that is not part of our culture. It's the trauma that has been put onto our culture. And that trauma that has been put onto our culture, it continues to happen over and over and over again. And these exercises are designed to disrupt that pattern so that we don't carry it and send it on to our daughters, so that we continue to eradicate these generational curses that other groups have put on us. Because it's all connected, it's all intertwined, and it's all intergenerational. I love watching the videos where the parents are teaching the kids to look in the mirror at themselves and tell themselves they're great, right? Instead of, little girl, sit down and be quiet. Little girl, shut up. There's a difference between the kids that are told to shut up and the kids that are told that they are great. The kids that are told, what's another thing that we're told? Let's talk about this. And I promise you, I'm going to end this soon, but let's talk about this. Girl, sit down somewhere. You're being too much. Don't nobody want to hear all that. I done told you to keep your mouth shut. Right? Now, what is it for you? Write that down. What are the things that you've heard in your family that you find yourself saying to your own children, that you find yourself saying to other people's children? In those formative years, from 0 to 7, we begin to form our personality based off the things that we have been told, because the reality is we are born divinely perfect. It is biblical. God knew us before we were born. We were divinely fashioned in our mother's womb before we were born. And God is not making half people. God is making people that are whole, perfect, and complete. And then we get programmed with these ideas that other people put into us that we internalize. It's time to disrupt that system. It is rooted in white supremacy. It is rooted in oppression, and it is rooted in Jim Crow. And we have an opportunity to shift that. I don't care if you're 20, 30, 40, 60, 100. You have the power to eradicate that from your system. Now, there's going to be a piece that's always going to be worked on. I'm not saying that it's going to disappear, but now you have the tools to rewrite your narrative. So let's close this out. This, to me, is what the soft life is about. This journey of self-discovery, the journey of understanding the power and the tools that you have within yourself to self-correct, to recalibrate your journey, to fall back in line on the path of your purpose and your passion. And here's the thing. You get to do it day by day. Just like you put on your shoes, just like you pick out your clothes, you get to pick out what you're going to say to yourself today. You get to be your own hype person, and you get to correct those things that you've been told since your childhood. Now remember, Black woman, my sister, your story is your power. All of those moments that has led to your triumphs and your trials, that's your story, that's your superpower. But when you shift the words that you say to yourself, you shift the world that's around you. Keep tending to this practice. Keep being tender with yourself. And know that every time you reframe your narrative and reclaim your power, you become a beacon for yourself and every sister who's watching you. Every little kid that's watching you. Now, I'm not saying it's your responsibility. I'm not saying that at all. This is all about you. But something about us activates power in other people. And if we feel disempowered, we're going to disempower other people. If you feel empowered, you're automatically going to empower people, not by what you say, not by what you do, but by who you are. So, this is the thing. Keep learning to speak the truth to yourself. Keep in the process of rewriting your narrative in your head. Keep quieting that inner critic and recognize that that is not you. That is not who you are. That is something somebody told you, and you chose to believe it consciously or unconsciously. But now you have the power, the knowledge, the information to rewrite it. Every time she, he, they, whatever the name is, whatever the entity is, whatever that voice is, you now have the tools to shift it. So until the next time, until we get to episode 8, I want you to stay liberated, stay soft, and know that you are a strong, sovereign being that has the power to do anything. You have the power to change your life simply by changing the conversations that you're having with yourself. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I know it was a big one, but again, I wanted you to have the tools because I know you're powerful. I see it every day. I hear it every day. Shift, change, rinse, and repeat. What's the song? I got the power. You got the power, sis.
Thank you for listening to Black Women Amplified. We hope you enjoyed the show. Be sure to subscribe and log on to blackwomenamplified.com for more information. Keep shining.